Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we are going to taste a classic Rioja Red blend and put it head to head with 3 monovarietal wines that traditionally made that blend. The idea for this video actually came from one of the Masters of Wine exam questions, and this is not the first video I have done based on it. The question stated you have 4 wines, 3 of them are monovarietal wines, and 1 is a blend of all 3. That really gets you thinking. First, you have to know which winemaking regions traditionally produce blends and which grapes are typically made into a blend. And then, of course, you have to talk with the wines themselves. I think it is a nice exercise. It makes you consider how each grape stands on its own and what it adds to the final blend. And today, I wanted to focus on Red Rioja blend, and there's another reason for that, not just simply it being fun exercise. Traditionally, Rioja was a blend. It was a blend of different grape varieties of different vineyards, but that has changed significantly. These days, we are increasingly talking about and praising single vineyard wines, viñedo singular. And I remember that in my market, at one point, it actually became quite challenging to find a classic Rioja blend because monovarietal wines were so highly praised and popular. And for a while, it was Tempranillo alone that took the spotlight. Now the trend has calmed down a little bit. Of course, the style we each prefer is very personal, so it is not my place to judge. But there's one thing I would like to highlight. With a shift towards Tempranillo dominance, the diversity of grape varieties within Rioja started to disappear. According to PhD Juan Carlos Sancha, at the beginning of 20th century, there were more than 40 different grape varieties in Rioja. And only less than 100 years later, that number had dropped to just 7, with Tempranillo, Garnacha, and Viura being responsible for over 90% of all the plantings. Thankfully, I'm happy to say that numbers are improving compared to early 2000s. In fact, I recently highlighted one of my discoveries here on this very YouTube channel, Maturana Blanca, which I was introduced to by Juan Carlos Sancha himself. I absolutely fell in love with it, and it also does not hurt that it offers great value. Sadly though, some of the historic grape varieties are gone forever and there is no way of resurrecting them. And since for a long time we have favored volume, reliability, and disease resistance over quality, we may have lost something truly great, I fear. Today we are championing diversity of Rioja's terroir. We acknowledge the incredible variation between sub-regions, different sites, and single vineyards. But alongside that, we should also be championing the diversity of Rioja's grape varieties and acknowledge that Tempranillo might not be well suited for all the different terroirs within the region. You see, Tempranillo is an early ripening grape that prefers cooler sites at higher elevation and with stronger diurnal shifts. It offers a range of red fruits with occasional darker, riper character. Personally, I find it very difficult to identify Tempranillo in a blind tasting because it can be so damn versatile. It can make everything from rosé to light-bodied, fruit-driven red wines meant for early consumption, all the way to the full-bodied, concentrated, and intensely rich, age-worthy superstars, and everything in between. One thing's for sure though, it makes a great friend. Tempranillo is a perfect blending partner and has the ability to coexist with and not to overpower the other grape varieties. While I talk the talk, I'm actually playing it safe with other grape varieties for this tasting, which is why the next grape in the Rioja blend is Garnacha. But Garnacha is a grape variety that simply deserves more love than it has ever received. It might not deliver the most deeply colored wines, but we should not judge it by its appearance. Because when it comes to flavor, it absolutely delivers. Spiced red and black berries, opulence without losing freshness, and an overall great juiciness and plumpness. My only issue with Garnacha, and it is really just in its genes, is that it develops high sugar levels as it matures and thus is responsible for higher alcohol wines. Maybe not as fashionable today, but when it is done masterfully and is well integrated, it has never been a problem for me. Now, the third grape I have chosen today is something a bit more unique, Graciano. It is known to be a difficult grape. Sarah Jane Evans, Master of Wine, even jokes in her book that the name Graciano comes from the phrase no gracias, as in no thanks and refusing this grape variety. But I think it is more linked with the grape's low yields and long growing cycle rather than its flavors. Because flavor-wise, it is known to produce aromatic red wines with good acidity and good tannic grip. And in today's changing climate, Graciano might have comeback moment as it adapts well to drought and does not mind heat, as you can also find it planted in southern Spain. With this in mind, I wanted to try something today. We live in a time when we have access to both classic blended wines and single varietal wines. And that means we can actually taste how each grape behaves in the glass and what it brings to the blend. That kind of comparison historically was only possible at the winery. So here's what I'm doing. I will blind taste a classic Rioja blend made from Tempranillo, Garnacha, and Graciano. Then I will add 3 more wines to the mix, each made from just one of those grapes. 100% Tempranillo, 100% Garnacha, and a rare 100% Graciano. Tasting blind will help me to assess how each grape performs on its own, what they contribute to the blend, and how they hold up when it comes to quality. For this tasting, I was not specifically looking for Rioja-only wines, so when I had opportunity to add single varietal wines from different winemaking regions, I absolutely did. So let's go! As always, these wines were poured by my cameraman, so I don't know which one is which. Let's start with wine number 1. Okay, so this is deeply colored purple wine. Not necessarily super inky, but definitely quite deep. And you do feel some of those red berries, really ripe, dark blueberries and blackberries on the nose. But I would not say that this is particularly intensely aromatic wine. It is rather shy. There's maybe something spicy here as well. But that spice is definitely not Garnacha's spice. I mean, look at that color. I don't think that Garnacha is capable of producing that kind of colored wines. Something sweet, something even chocolatey. It is really difficult to catch this wine on the nose. Let's taste it. Maybe on the palate it will tell us something more. So this is very first time I'm tasting today, so naturally my palate is very sensitive. And I would want to say that the tannins here, the acidity here, the alcohol here is quite elevated. So because of that grip, because of that freshness, I would want to go to Graciano. However, the very first sip of wine can often be misleading, as I told you before, because the palate is very, very sensitive. And it might as well be Tempranillo, because on the nose, it is not as perfumed as maybe I would expect for Graciano to be. So this is a tricky wine at the moment, and I will leave it for later. But at this moment, I will give it 89 points. Let's move to wine number 2. Okay, so this wine on the nose tells you a bit more. There's longer story, if you will. I do feel crushed strawberries and crushed sweet cherries, nothing really too sour here, but also notes of cedarwood, hint of smokiness and vanilla. Nothing seems sweet, everything just seems earthy, and there is this depth to it. Color-wise, it also shows quite deep color, but it is not as purple. This time it's more garnet, if you can see that. Let's taste that wine. Okay, so here on the palate, this wine shows beautiful acidity. It is really lively, juicy, and zesty type of acidity. And it has really structured, firm, elevated levels of tannin. But a tannin here plays more like a parent, something that is trying to gather all the fruit and all the flavors in one place, not as a backbone. And it also shows well-integrated alcohol, and the body is medium plus, maybe medium. I don't know, for me, there's something authentic and something classic to it, and I will give this wine 91 points. It definitely showed more complexity on the nose and the palate as well. So let's move to wine number 3, which is the lightest color wine. And from the color alone and just judging the wines that I have here today on this flight, I would want to go straight to Garnacha, but let's just give it a chance and let's smell it. There is this kind of silliness to Garnacha, something like a wild child. It is just so beautiful and so honest, and at the same time so charming. I do love it a lot. And it smells of these crushed wild cherries, where you also have maybe hints of the cherry pit in it. The nose is so intense, so perfumed. Wow. And even though this wine is just bursting with fruit, you do have that underlined earthiness, that Earl Grey character, those cut rose stems. Something maybe green, but not green in a way it's unripe, but green that it just adds a dimension to the wine. Tobacco leaf, some smoky character. I love it. Let's taste it. I've been talking about the nose so much. Let's finally taste the wine. You know what is interesting? I have been told that Garnacha is a grape variety that cannot keep its acidity. So the idea that it usually drops its acidity quite quickly. But then I was listening one podcast with Juan Carlos Sancha, and he actually said that when you measure the pH level of Tempranillo versus Garnacha, Garnacha actually shows a lower pH level, which translates in higher acidity. And this is exactly what I felt in this wine. So you do feel that depth. You do feel that generosity Garnacha offers. You always feel a bit lower tannins than in Tempranillo, but the acidity here was really prominent. It was really fresh and zesty. I don't know where this came from. If you know, let me know in the comment section below. What are your thoughts? What maybe sparked this idea that Garnacha cannot keep its acidity? Because here it keeps it very well. Let's be honest, maybe I'm mistaken and maybe this is not Garnacha, but this is the lightest colored wine within all 4 wines. So I want to be quite sure with this. I will give this wine 93 points. No, 93.5 points, and I will move to wine number 4. Okay, so this is another deeply colored, inky wine, but it is not as purpley as the wine number 1. And here this wine has something earthy in it, but also these really black and blueberry flavors, black cherries, dark chocolatey plums, not just regular plum, but like really dark blue plum that has been dipped into chocolate. There's something dried here as well, like a lot of dried fruit character. I don't think it translates into the fact that grapes have been dried, not necessarily. It is just the flavor that this wine displays. And look at the tears, they're also stained, like this wine shows stained tears. Could this be our Graciano? I do enjoy this, this kind of sticky date pudding nose. But there's also something spicy here, like nutmeg, no, not cinnamon, clove maybe, something spicy with a grip, with an edge. Let's taste that wine. You remember what I said in the introduction, that Graciano had this tannic grip? So let me come to wine number 1. And let's just quickly come. You know, this one, it shows a bit softer fruit. And this one shows a bit firmer, blackish, more intense fruit character. This one is like la fruit. Funny fruit, easy fruit. But also retasting it. It is quite beautiful. I think I missed it when I tasted it from the very beginning. It does show this beautiful mid-palate. I will higher its score by 1. I will put it 90. I don't think it deserved 89. It is actually quite beautiful. It holds quite well on the mid-palate. I think it's lovely. But the soft fruit character, even though I will stay true to what I said in the beginning, this one, wine number 1, definitely shows elevated, grippier tannin, but it is completely different tannic structure that we have in wine number 4. It is a bit more rustic, and also the acidity. We do have elevated acidity in wine number 1 as well, but here the acidity is more raw. It is more fresh, more nervy, more crazy. And here it is kind of elevated but calmed down. It is well integrated. It is part of the fruit. And I think this is beautiful wine, but there's one element or one thing in this wine that maybe disturbs from truly appreciating it, and it is the sweetness on the front. The very first sip which you take, it seems sweet. And it kind of takes away from the character of the wine. It takes away from the acidity, it takes away from the tannin, and then the sweetness disappears, and the tannin and acidity is all that is left. And it maybe disturbs the palate a little bit. I think if the sweetness would not be there, you would appreciate the mid-palate, the fruit, the flavor a bit more. So I will give this wine 88 points. For me, I would want to guess that this is Graciano and this is pure Tempranillo. We are done. So let's reveal the wines and see what is what. Okay, so let's start with wine number 1, which was the struggling wine for me. I end up giving it 90 points and said it was pure Tempranillo. Okay, so this is Vina Sastre. You definitely know how to pronounce it better. Ribera del Duero Roble 2022 vintage. So this is quite iconic and great producer, but this is their entry-level wine. And it did open up a bit more in the glass after a while than the very first time I tasted it. But it could also be due to the fact that it was my very first wine I tasted today. And I guess this is what I told you about the damn Tempranillo. It is so versatile. It can be whatever. And here, elevated tannin, quite grippy in style, elevated acidity. But I guess one of the reasons for this is actually that this wine is coming from quite high vineyards. I think it is around 800 meters above sea level or plus. So this is great proof that Tempranillo is an amazing grape variety that can stand alone on its own. And it also works great as this blending partner or friend that just brings all together. Let's move to wine number 2, which I thought was blend. I gave this wine 91 points. I thought it was quite complex. Okay. So this is Remelluri Reserva 2016 Rioja. So this is the classic blend, and it is created from Tempranillo, Garnacha, and Graciano. So I told you that this wine for me was quite complete. It was quite complex. So here you go. Rioja as a blend offers great complexity and completeness as a wine. So there must have been a reason why these grapes were blended together, not only because each of them grows and performs better in its unique terroir, but also that maybe bringing them together can create this really great experience in the bottle. Remelluri, thank you very much. And this is also the oldest one. So this is almost 10 years old. So 9 years old at the moment. Good stuff, and it's not that expensive. It's quite affordable. So let's move to wine number 3, which was my top scored wine today, 93.5. And judging by the color, it cannot be Graciano. It is dear to me producer. It is Bodegas Frontonio Supersonico Garnacha 2021 vintage. So in their webpage, it actually says it is 100% Garnacha. But when I started to read a bit more about it, maybe it is a field blend with few white grape varieties mixed in, but it was co-fermented. I'm not sure, but here on the label it says Garnacha. And this was a beauty. And I think what Garnacha adds to the blend is that kind of charming spiciness on the nose, maybe elevates a bit the alcohol, you know, maybe adds a bit sweeter flavor, sweeter fruit to the palate, softens the tannin where it's needed. And actually, something that I thought I would never say, with this in mind, with this wine in mind, it could also add this beautiful freshness, this beautiful acidity. Yes, this is puzzling me because Supersonico for sure had this lively freshness on the palate. Yes, absolutely. It of course could also be contributed to the fact that this is coming from Aragon, which is higher elevation vineyards. And I guess the winemakers behind this project are also trying to conserve the acidity to make this wine fresher. There's some whole bunch in this wine, and maybe due to the fact we had those green Earl Grey characters that could also contribute the freshness on the palate. This is very beautiful wine and it is quite affordable. So if you can find it, I encourage you to try it. So let's move to wine number 4. Which I guess is no surprise, and I feel quite disappointed at this moment because I do think that Graciano can be charming. And this is Finca de la Marquesita, Montaña, Graciano, 100% Graciano, yes, Rioja. So 14% alcohol. I do not know much of this producer. I was just happy to find in my market a 100% Graciano wine. And I think there was a nice charm, and I understand why some people would enjoy it. However, maybe it was made with a different consumer in mind. I don't know. But I also want to highlight something. Tasting wine number 4 made me understand better why Graciano is added to the blend, because it had that raw acidity, it had that tannic grip. It kind of adds a checkpoint in the wine when you taste it, you know, when you have it on the palate. You have those structural elements that give more shape to the wine. So it was a very educational tasting for me. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And if you want to add something in the comment section below, if you want me to do other blends versus monovarietal wines, please do. Any ideas, any discussions, I love it all. And if you like this format, make sure to watch my other video where I tasted Bordeaux blend versus monovarietal wines of Bordeaux.